Saturday night. Ugh. I tore the wreath off my head and tossed it aside. It rattled loudly against the bar top, neatly toppling over the tower of empty shot glasses we'd assembled. That bad, huh? V asked. Recycled sludge, I spat. Sensory feeds jacked through the roof, audio's drowned out, harsh edits. Might as well serve them up raw if you're gonna put out shit like that. I grabbed my drink and downed the rest of it in one large gulp. Spilled a little down my chin, but no biggie. Couldn't believe I was back at Lizzie's. Felt weird, like I was a ghost haunting my own past. Very little had changed since I'd stormed out the door 2 years earlier, but the quality of the BDs had definitely taken a nosedive off the proverbial cliff. Bianca finally seemed to be enjoying herself, though it was a constant battle having to keep her engaged. Not so with V. She was having a blast. So was I. We'd earned it after that horrible exchange with Rita. Talk about a kick in the balls. Poor V. Poor drunk V. Fucking Susie, V shouted over the deafening music blasting across the club. See what happens when you lose the best BD editor in NC? Bianca leaned in and said something. Couldn't hear what. I tilted my head and raised a hand to my ear. Said more like the best BD editor, period. V hummed in agreement as she chugged the contents of her drink, tilting her head back as far as it would go until nothing more came out. She slammed the empty glass down on the bar with a loud thunk and slid it over to join the rest. Damn straight! I giggled and waved Mateo down to get another round of shots fired up. We were already lit, but I wasn't so far gone yet not to be aware of it. Still, tomorrow's hangover would be a monster bitch, but it had been ages since I'd cut loose like this and it felt fucking great. And that wasn't just the booze talking either. We were sharing drinks, laughing with one another, making crude jokes, shit I'd taken for granted when I'd left NC in the dust. Mateo had barely finished pouring our shots when V snatched them away and handed them out, a devious grin on her face. God, it felt good to see her so alive again. She looked awful the last time I'd seen her 2 years ago, little more than a walking, talking corpse. That wasn't the V standing before me now, though. She was bright and vibrant, full of joy and energy, captivating. As soon as we had our drinks, V raised hers high into the air, spilling a little onto the floor. To Judy, best BD editor, period. Bianca raised her glass, not as quickly or as high as V had, but my hand remained stubbornly heavy. Appreciate it, guys, but I'm hardly the best. Bullshit, V fired back. Now put your fucking glass in the air before I get mad. Huh, and what are you gonna do about it if I don't? Club me with those spongy arms of yours? Mateo, V shouted in a childish, tattling voice. Judy's not drinking. Oh shit, I grumbled as Mateo took up his usual commanding pose over the bar. Come on now, Jude, you know the rules. Arch that arm and stick that glass up in the air for all to see. What's your reflection? I briefly caught sight of Bianca's shocked expression as I rolled my eyes. What's your reflection? Fine. I raised my shot glass and clanked it against theirs. Felt a cold drop of tequila dribble down my wrist. To Judy! Half the bar shouted the toast along with us. I burst out into laughter, tears springing from my eyes as I raised the glass to my lips and threw it back. Oh, fuck. I sighed, licking away the little bit that had spilled down my wrist. That feels good. Got that right. V nodded. Fucking nerves are still shit to shot. I mean, shot to shit. Shit, I'm shot. Mateo, can you set us up with another round of shits? Babe, coming right up, Mateo said, grabbing another set of glasses. You ask me, V said, resting an elbow on the bar and cradling her chin in an adorably cute fashion. You had nothing to worry about today. It's not like you weren't gonna fucking nail it, unless your corpo side told your artsy side to fuck off for the day. Hell no. I'm an artist, first and foremost. Always have been, always will be. Mateo finished setting up our shots and slid the glasses across the bar. Here you go. I reached for mine, trying to think of a real zinger of a toast I could hit V with. But I stopped when I noticed there were only 2 glasses on the bar and not 3. I squinted, counted again. Yep, still 2. Wait, where's B's? Told him I'd pass this round, Bianca said. Oh, come on, I whined. Loosen up a little. Bianca glared back at me. I am loose. This fucking woman. Good thing I knew how to have a good time. The hell you are? I reached over and took Bianca by the hand. Come on, I'll get you greased and loose. I led Bianca away from the bar and towards the dance floor. It felt like I was dragging a sack of wet rice behind me. We squeezed our way through the crowd, taking the occasional limb to the shoulder as we worked our way further into the sea of bodies swaying to the music. Didn't recognize the song that was playing, but it was definitely a banger, something I could move to. Once I found a small space for ourselves, I stopped and turned around. Bianca looked as if she was staring into the eyes of a cyber psycho. Come on, I called out, swaying my hips to the rhythm. Dance with me. Bianca eyed the crowd nervously. Once she saw that nobody was paying any attention to her, she began to twist her arms and legs in what I could only assume was her own style of dancing. Fuck. I had my work cut out for me. But I didn't let my bewilderment show. Instead, I drew closer to her, forcing her to dance with me rather than for me. It wasn't easy, but by the time that another song cut in with a deep, pulsating beat, she was starting to get into the swing of things. Fun, ain't it? I asked, swinging my arms over my head. Clubbing. Bianca managed to crack a smile. Alright, you got me. It is a little fun. Fuck yeah, it is. You get to do this. I brushed against her, our lips almost touching, and ran my hands along her waist, encouraging her to do the same. She didn't need much convincing. I felt her fingertips start to trace along my hips, flirting with my ass. I was about to do the same to her when I caught sight of the woman sitting all alone at the bar. Shit. What? V's watching us. Bianca followed my gaze. V was doing a surprisingly decent job of pretending to text someone on her holo. But every so often, she would look up at us before quickly looking away, shattering the illusion. So what? Bianca asked as if it were nothing, pulling me towards her for the first time since we'd set foot on the dance floor. Let her watch. Let her watch? What was this, a repeat of last night? We were supposed to be having fun, not flaunting ourselves. V's eyes found their way back to me once again. She held my gaze this time, acknowledging she'd been caught and forcing a smile to her lips, even raising her freshly filled glass as a toast to us. But the deception was obvious. Of all the things she'd lost, her complete lack of ability to tell a lie hadn't been among them. Looks sad as shit, I remarked. Babe, you've done your part. Can't keep dragging her along now. Not dragging her along, if you say so. Bianca tried to get me to dance with her again. The irony wasn't lost on me. I moved about, going through the motions, trying to find a rhythm, but I couldn't get my mind off of V. She looked so lonely sitting there by herself. Suddenly, my eyes lit up as an idea came to mind. "I'm gonna ask her to dance with us," I said, phrasing it in such a way that it was clear I wasn't asking. Not me, us. That way we're just three chooms having a good time together. I was certain Bianca was going to protest, to remind me that this was all V's idea, and it wasn't our responsibility to cheer her up. And, to be fair, she would have been right. But to my surprise, she nodded in agreement without putting up a fuss. "Alright." I didn't waste any time, flagging V's attention and waving for her to get her ass on the dance floor. "V, come over, dance with us." V shook her head. "Nah, I'm alright." The hell she was. I rushed over and grabbed her by the arm, lifting her off the bar stool. "Get the fuck out here, Valerie." V stiffened. Her eyes grew wide, and her lips parted as if she were recalling a distant memory that had eluded her for so long. I was about to ask why she was dragging her heels when I suddenly realized what I'd said. V had always been protective of her identity. Something about growing up on the streets and the importance of living the life of the person you wanted to be. Very few knew her real name. So few, in fact, that it was entirely possible that no one except me knew the name her parents had given her when she was born. And I had just gone and dropped it right out in the open for all to hear. Not that anyone seemed to give a fuck. As far as they were concerned, she was just some rando at the bar, another face in the crowd. But not to me. "Come on," I said, a little less pushy this time. "Come dance with us." V finally relented and allowed me to lead her to the dance floor. Bianca was waiting for us right where I'd left her, still swaying awkwardly from side to side, though she seemed to be having a good time. I released V from my grip and was about to start dancing again when a new song came on, one of Lizzie Wizzy's hit singles. Bit slow for club music, but it had an arousing vibe that dug deep into my bones. The transition served as a natural cue for V, who closed her eyes and began to sway seductively to the beat. I was just starting to feel that addictive swell of emotion I experienced whenever I got lost in a particularly great song when someone suddenly bumped into me. I stumbled and would have fallen to the floor if not for the firm hand that grabbed onto me. V stared back at me, still dancing even as she held steady me. As I got my feet back under me, I couldn't help but notice her. To really notice her. Her dress was amazing, and she seemed to glow with an ethereal radiance, as if all the spotlights were trained solely on her. Beautiful. She raised her arms into the air and began to gyrate, eyes lidded, staring back at me with a look that made me weak in the knees again. Could feel myself being drawn to her like a magnet. My hands somehow found their way onto her waist. Wasn't groping her or anything like that, just wanted to turn things up a notch. V slid around, allowing my fingers to trace across the fabric of her dress. She glanced over her shoulder and backed into my touch, grinding against me. I tightened my grip on her, guiding her movements, resting my chin on her shoulder so that we were cheek to cheek, faces just inches apart. Our eyes remained locked in an intimate stare, our bodies moving in perfect tandem with one another. Now this was dancing. I felt fingers combing through my hair and realized they belonged to V, who had reached back and was pulling me closer. No, not pulling me, guiding me. She lowered her gaze, began searching my lips. Heart pounding, I did the same. I remembered how they tasted, could feel myself drawing towards them. A loud pulsating beat suddenly shook the dance floor. The crowd erupted into a chaotic frenzy. Frozen, I stared back at V and saw my own confusion reflected in her eyes. "Where's B?" I managed in a weak voice. V pointed to the bar. Sure enough, Bianca was sitting there with her head hung low, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else but here. Shit. I should go over there, V said, as someone would if they were attending a funeral. I'll talk to her. As appreciative as I was of the gesture, and as rattled as I felt by what had just taken place, I knew in my heart that this was one conversation V couldn't be a part of. I had fucked up, and I was the only one who could make things right. No, I said. I'll talk to her. Gonna need a few minutes. Alone. Sure. I managed a small smile and started towards the bar. I hated leaving V behind like that. Again. But I had to. I felt like I was marching to the gallows as I crossed the dance floor. Caught Mateo's eye as I neared the bar. Fucker shot me a, "Yeah, I saw what you did, you little demon you," look as I neared. "Hey!" I called out to Bianca, hoping my upbeat tone might somehow get me out of this mess. "You alright?" Bianca didn't even bother to look at me. "How much longer you want to stay?" "I dunno, was thinking another hour, but do what you want," she grumbled. I sighed. Not at her attitude, but at my own stupidity. There was nothing worse than having someone pretend your feelings didn't exist. I sat down next to her. Didn't know what else to say except offer a heartfelt apology. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel like a third wheel." "Anything I can do to make it up to you?" "Get me out of here, for starters. Can't hear a fucking thing." Yikes. I was well aware that I'd screwed up, but this felt like overkill. It wasn't like I'd done anything that wrong. So I'd gotten caught up in a song and danced with V for a couple minutes. Big deal. It wasn't like I'd cheated on her or anything like that. Certainly hadn't kissed her, even if for a moment it had seemed like an inevitability, but overreaction or not, I was in no position to argue with her. If leaving was what it would take to patch things up with her, then that's what we would do. Okay. I glanced at V, who stood awkwardly amidst the crowd, unsure of what to do with herself. Great. I waved her over. Didn't want to crush her spirits from a distance. Not again. Think we're gonna take off. Oh, V said, the disappointment in her voice obvious. Okay. I guess thanks for coming out. Sorry if I fucked things up. It's alright. V's just got some history with bad exes. Something I can relate to. And no, I don't mean you. V nodded along, though she didn't seem sold. In fact, my words seemed to have the opposite effect of what I'd intended. Her eyes had darkened, and a frown was now pulling at her lips. I would have chalked it up to the typical disappointment anyone felt when a fun evening finally drew to an end, except I knew there was more to it than that. This wasn't simply a dour end to another typical night. This was the end. No more meetups, no more awkward sit-downs. And there was no doubt in my mind that V was keenly aware of that too.
Oh shit, I don't think that was an aspirin.
So, V breathed nervously. I guess this is— Who the fuck let you in here? The voice boomed over the speakers, causing the music to cut out and for the club to turn eerily silent. I spun around to see Susie standing at the opposite end of the bar. Her eyes bore into me like a pair of daggers, and she had the same scowl on her face that she'd had when she'd cussed me out the door for the last time. Shit, I whispered to myself. Susie, see, you're just as welcoming as ever. You've got no business coming in here, Susie barked, charging towards me like a brawler ready to throw hands. You turned your back on the mocks. Now get the fuck out of here before I— V suddenly cut between us, stopping Susie dead in her tracks. You better back the fuck off, right now. Susie's head jerked back as if she'd been slapped. The fuck are you? I'm the one warning you to get the fuck out of here, V growled, before I take matters into my own hands. I couldn't stifle the gasp that escaped my lips. In all my years with the Mocks, I'd never seen anyone stand up to Susie like that, not even me. In Night City, there were people you could threaten, and there were people you couldn't. Susie was in the latter camp. She seemed just as shocked as the rest of us were, even taking to searching the crowd as though she needed confirmation that the words that had just been slung her way had actually been uttered. I was vaguely aware of a sweaty hand closing around my waist, trying to tug me away, but I was too distracted by the spectacle unfolding before me to notice. This wasn't the same V I'd come to know over the last 24 hours. This was the old V, the one who'd never backed down from a fight in her life, and even though she'd been stripped down to the bone and likely wouldn't stand a chance against Susie and those steel alloy fists of hers, that didn't stop her from holding her ground and staring Susie down as though she were nothing more than a gonk little bitch who'd barked up the wrong alley. Once Susie realized that what was happening was actually happening, her eyes darted towards the entrance. Rita stood next to the door, along with a dozen or so other patrons. The only thing missing was a box of popcorn. Rita, house bands for all three of them, you hear? Susie gave V one final threatening glance and stormed back through the employee entrance, disappearing from view. I heaved a sigh of relief and managed to pull my arm free from Bianca's grasp. Come on, chooms, Rita said sternly, gesturing towards the door. Night's over. The three of us exchanged glances and then made our way outside. The line waiting to get in had thinned out considerably since we'd arrived. Rita offered us an apology that wasn't hers to make. I told her it was okay, that we knew she was just doing her job. She asked if we wanted to meet up sometime, get caught up properly. I lied and told her I would give her a call later to figure things out. As nice as it was to see her again, I didn't want to get sucked back into that aspect of my past. As we waited for our respective cabs to come pick us up, V stood off to the side, idly kicking an empty bottle down the alleyway. Her eyes were plastered to the road, and she looked like a child who'd been scolded. I glanced questioningly at Bianca, who only rolled her eyes at me. Sensing that was as much of a stamp of approval as I would get, I wandered my way over to her. sorry about that, V mumbled. Yeah, what was that about? Don't worry about it. Come on, tell me. V finally met my gaze. Might have just been a trick of the light, but it almost looked as though she had tears in her eyes. Sometimes I get so angry, Jude. I shrugged. I get that. No, you don't. I don't mean angry like I want to smash my fists against the pavement kind of angry. I mean my entire body burns with it until I feel like I'm gonna burst out of my skin. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Jude. I had dreams once upon a time. Wanted to become a legend. Or, hell, even a half-decent actress. I shot V a quizzical look. An actress? Pipe dream from back when I was a kid, she clarified. Life just wasn't supposed to be like this. Wasn't supposed to be this hard. Jesus. How I could relate. I wanted nothing more at that moment than to reach out and comfort her, to tell her that I really did understand. But if I did that, it would serve to piss off Bianca even further. And if I didn't, I was basically leaving V to the wolves. I was caught between a rock and a hard place, between my past and my future, between V and Bianca. A local cab, one that looked beaten to hell and back, pulled up in front of us. V's ride. Thanks for a fun evening, Bianca called out, not bothering to extend the same politeness she had the night before. I winced at the bitterness in her tone. V was staring back at me, waiting for the guillotine to drop. Couldn't bring myself to say the words. Not because she didn't want to hear them, but because I didn't want to say them. Not yet, at least. We'll talk later, okay? I offered, hoping I wasn't so drunk that I wouldn't remember mentioning it in the morning. Okay. I didn't know which of us pulled the other into the embrace I found myself in. Her body felt warm against my own. Familiar. But even though I kept trying to tell myself that I would see her again, there was still a foreboding sense of finality to the way we held on to each other. Thanks, V, I whispered. I nodded, and with that, I let go of her and watched her climb into the cab. A few moments later, she was gone. Would I ever see her again? I didn't know. And that made me want to cry.